The Alpha King of the Western Reach knelt on my kitchen floor. His knees hit the same stone I had scrubbed blood from. His wolves, 300 of them, stood in the corridor behind him, and not one of them breathed. And his twin sons, 3 years old, wild-eyed and feral and terrified of every living thing in this world, were asleep in my arms. And the only thing I could think was, the soup is going to burn. I am not a Luna, not a warrior, not a hidden princess. I am a kitchen orphan with flour on her face and burns on her arms, and a wolf she has kept hidden for 2 years because showing it would have gotten her killed. This is the story of how I ended up on that floor. But it does not start with the king. It starts with hunger. My name is Wren. I do not have a surname. Orphans in the Ashford Pack do not receive one. I was 6 years old when they brought me to the kitchen. My parents died in the Thornhill border raid, burned alive while I hid under a cart and listened. No pack would take me. The Ashford Alpha, a man named Gregor, agreed to house me in exchange for labor. He assigned me to the basement kitchen because I was small enough to scrub the corners. I was 14 now. 8 years. 8 years of stone floors that stayed cold in every season, no windows, one door, and the kind of darkness that teaches you to measure time by the smell of bread rising. I cooked for 60 wolves. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. I served. I cleaned. I ate whatever was left. Bread heels, cold fat, the scrapings from pots that no one wanted. Some nights there was nothing left. Those nights I drank water and pretended it was soup and went to sleep with my hands pressed against my stomach to hold the emptiness still. Nobody hit me. I want to be clear about that. Gregor never struck me. He did something worse. He made me invisible. In 8 years, not one wolf in the Ashford Pack learned my name. I cooked their food. I scrubbed their floors. I served their feasts, and they walked over me the way you walk over tile, without looking down, without wondering who laid it. As the proverb teaches, the cruelest thing you can do to a person is not to hurt them. It is to stand in the same room and pretend they are not there. Bruises heal. Invisibility doesn't. I had a wolf. She came when I was 12, quietly at 3 in the morning, while I was kneading bread. Not with cracking bones and howls and the celebration that pack children receive. Just a warmth in my chest. A voice. I am here. I have always been here. I kept her hidden. In the Ashford Pack, a wolf meant reassignment, patrol, labor, breeding matches. The kitchen was cold and dark and forgotten, but it was mine. The only thing that had ever been mine. I was not giving it up for a pack that had never given me anything. The Alpha King arrived on a Tuesday. I knew it was Tuesday because Tuesdays were baking days, and I had flour on my face and dough under my nails, and the kind of exhaustion that lives in your bones when you have been awake since 4. Alpha King Kelan Voss, ruler of the Western Reach, most powerful wolf in 5 territories, visiting on a political tour, alliances, borders, the machinery of men agreeing with each other over expensive wine. I did not see him arrive. The kitchen is underground. I heard boots, voices, the particular energy that fills a house when someone important walks in and everyone becomes a louder, shinier version of themselves. Gregor had ordered a feast, roasted elk, 3 kinds of bread, root vegetables and bone marrow, a honey cake that took 4 hours and would be eaten in 10 minutes by wolves who would not taste it. I cooked. I served. I was invisible. Kitchen staff carry platters up the narrow stairs, set them on the serving table, and disappear before anyone sees. We are ghosts. We haunt the stairwell and leave food and vanish. On the 3rd trip up, carrying the honey cake, 4 hours of my life on a wooden board, I heard crying. Not adult crying, small crying. The hiccuping, exhausted crying of children who have been crying a long time and have run out of energy, but not out of pain. I set the honey cake on the stairs. I should have kept walking. That was the rule. Keep your head down, stay invisible, survive. I followed the crying. The guest quarters were warm, bright. Everything the kitchen was not. Third door, open a crack. 2 boys on the floor between 2 enormous beds. Twins, maybe 3. Dark hair, amber eyes drowning in tears. Fine clothes, tiny coats with silver buttons, little boots with wolf crests. A nurse stood over them, frazzled. One boy arched and screamed in her arms. The other reached for his brother. The volume was impossible for their size. The boy bit her. She put him down. He scrambled to his brother. They clung, cried harder. I stood in the doorway. Flower face, dough hands, the wrong person in the wrong place. "Who are you?" the nurse said. "Kitchen. You are not permitted on this floor. How long have they been crying? Since we arrived. They do not travel well. They want their—" She stopped. I looked at the twins. Not the tantrum crying of children who want something. The scared crying of children who are somewhere unfamiliar and cannot find anything safe. I knew that crying. I had made that sound. 6 years old on a cold kitchen floor with no one coming. "May I?" The nurse looked at me. Flour, burns, servant dress. Her expression said, "You are no one and you can do nothing." She stepped aside. Because she was out of options. I crossed the room slowly. The way you approach small, frightened things, without speed, without the assumption that your presence is welcome. I sat on the floor, 3 feet from them, at their level, and I hummed, not a song, the melody my mother used to hum while she braided my hair. The only memory I had of her that was not fire and screaming and silence. I had carried it for 8 years in the kitchen, humming at 3 in the morning while I kneaded bread, because the humming made the dark feel smaller. The first boy stopped crying. Amber eyes, enormous, wet, looking at me the way a child looks at something unexpected that is not frightening. The second boy stopped 3 seconds later. The first one crawled toward me. Slow, careful, testing. He reached my knee. Put one small hand on my leg. I did not move. Let him decide. He climbed into my lap. The second boy followed, faster, bolder. He wedged against my side and pressed his face into my arm and gripped my sleeve with the desperate strength of a child who has found something warm and is not letting go. I held them. 2 small boys in silver buttons curled against a kitchen orphan. They smelled like pine needles and clean wool and the sweetness that children carry before the world teaches them to be hard. I hummed. They breathed. The crying stopped. As the proverb teaches, some doors open with keys, some open with kindness, and the smallest hands open the doors that matter most. I did not notice the man in the doorway. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching. I do not know how long he had been there. Long enough. I noticed him the way you notice a change in weather. Suddenly, with the understanding that the temperature has shifted. Tall. Dark-haired. Amber eyes. The same amber as the twins. A face that was handsome, the way a cliff is handsome, carved by something stronger than time. No crown. He did not need one. Authority came off him like heat from a furnace. Alpha King Kalen Voss, the twins' father. "They have not let anyone hold them since their mother died," he said. His voice was quiet. Not the commanding bark I expected from the most powerful wolf in 5 territories. The voice of a man watching something impossible and trying to understand it. Their mother was dead. I held that knowledge carefully. "I did not know," I said. "Who are you?" The question, the same question that always came, and the answer, no one. Kitchen. Invisible. "Ren," I said. "I work in the kitchen." He looked at his sons, at the way they were curled against me, boneless, surrendered, the absolute trust of children who have found safety. One of the boys had fallen asleep against my chest. His fist was still gripping my sleeve. "Ren," the Alpha King said, like he was filing the name somewhere permanent. "They have not slept since we left the capital. 4 days. They are tired," I said. "They are in a strange place, and they do not know where they are safe. They just need to know someone is not going to leave. Are you going to leave?" I looked at the sleeping boy. at the small fist on my sleeve. Not until he lets go. I should have gone back to the kitchen. That was the rule. But the boy did not let go. And the second boy crawled fully into my lap and fell asleep with his face against my collarbone. And I sat on the floor holding two children who were not mine and feeling, for the first time in 8 years, necessary. Kaylin sat down. Not in a chair. On the floor, 3 feet from me, the alpha king of the Western Reach, cross-legged on a carpet, watching a kitchen orphan hold his sons. "How long have you been in the kitchen?" he asked. "Since I was 6. 8 years. Yes. Who put you there?" "Alpha Gregor. My parents were killed in the Thornhill raid. No one else would take me. He was quiet a long time." "Do they feed you?" Simple question. The answer was not simple. "I eat what is left. That is not what I asked." "Sometimes there is nothing left," I said. Something changed in his face, jaw tightening, eyes narrowing. The micro-expression of a man doing mathematics. 8 years, a child, scraps, a kitchen with no windows, and not liking the answer. I was beginning to understand that Alpha King Kalan Voss was not the kind of man who forgot things. Gregor found out. The kitchen orphan in the guest quarters with the Alpha King's sons. In the Ashford pack, information was currency and cruelty was interest. He came to the kitchen the next morning. Thick neck, small eyes. The swagger of a man who has power over people too small to resist and mistakes that for strength. "You were seen on the second floor. The Alpha King asked me to stay with his children." He stepped closer. His hand closed around my wrist. Tight, grinding, the casual violence of a man who has never been told no by anyone smaller than him. "You will not go near those children again. You will stay in this kitchen. You will cook. You will clean. You will remember what you are. What am I?" He squeezed. My bones shifted. "Nothing. You are nothing." He left. My wrist was bruised within the hour. I wrapped it with a kitchen cloth and kept cooking because that is what nothing does. It keeps cooking. It keeps surviving. But that night, lying on my cot with my wolf pacing inside me, furious, restless, more alive than she had ever been, I made a decision. I was not staying in this kitchen, not because of the king, not because of the twins, because a man had put his hand on me and called me nothing, and my wolf looked at me from inside and said, "We are not nothing. We have never been nothing." The twins found me anyway. 3-year-old boys do not understand politics. They understand warmth. They tracked me like wolves, down the main stairs, through the servants' corridor into the basement. Asher, the cautious one, stood in the doorway with amber eyes. Ronan, the bold one, walked straight to the prep table, climbed the stool, and said his first word to me. "Hungry." I looked at these 2 boys, sons of the most powerful alpha in the Western Reach, standing in a cold basement kitchen with no windows, looking at a kitchen orphan with flour on her face because she was the only person in this castle who had made them feel safe. I fed them. Gregor had told me to stay away. Gregor had bruised my wrist. Gregor's word was law. I fed them anyway. Warm bread with butter. Real soup. Thick, rich. The version I made for myself on nights when there was enough. The kind of soup that tells your body someone cares whether you eat. Ronan ate like a wolf, butter on his chin. Asher ate carefully, watching me between bites, making sure I was still there. Would you have obeyed? Would you have sent them away hungry because a man who starved you told you to? I could not. Something cracked open in my chest, not the bond, not yet. Something older. The feeling of feeding someone who is hungry and watching them become full. The thing I imagine mothers feel but would not know because mine died when I was 6. They came back every day. Every day I fed them. Every day Asher sat closer until he was in my lap while I peeled potatoes, his small hand on my sleeve. That grip, that tiny fist holding fabric, it rearranged my entire architecture. I did not know their father was watching. Kaylin had been looking for me. Quietly. He had asked the Ashford staff where the kitchen woman was. Gregor told him I was a servant, not available, and a more appropriate nurse had been assigned. The twins rejected the new nurse. And the next one. And the next. Kalon followed his sons, down the main stairs, through the servants' corridor, into the basement. He stood in the doorway and saw a cold kitchen with no windows. A girl, because at 14 I still looked like one, sitting on the floor with both his sons in her lap, peeling potatoes, one boy sleeping against her chest, the other eating bread and talking about a beetle he had found in the garden. She was listening to the beetle story with the same attention she would give a treaty negotiation. The kitchen was warm. The soup was on. And his sons, feral, inconsolable, motherless sons who had rejected every nurse, healer, and elder in the Western Reach, were peaceful. He also saw the bruise on my wrist. My sleeve had ridden up. The bruise was dark, purple and green, the shape of a hand that gripped hard enough to grind bone. He did not say anything. Not then. He left. And the next morning, the Ashford pack was summoned to the Great Hall for an unscheduled address. I was not invited. Kitchen staff do not attend pack addresses. I stood at the top of the basement stairs and listened through the door because orphans learn early that the information you overhear is worth more than the food they forget to give you. 60 wolves, plus Kalane's 20 guards. Gregor at the front, smiling the smile of a man expecting praise. I have been a guest in this pack for 6 days, Kalane said. His voice filled the hall like weather filling a valley. I have eaten your food. I have observed your operations, and I have questions. Gregor's smile faltered. My first question is about your kitchen. Who runs it? A servant, Gregor said. A kitchen girl. Her name, Wren. How old is Wren? 14. How long has she been in the kitchen? 8 years. Kalin let the numbers sit. The way a judge lets evidence sit. 8 years. An orphan from the Thornhill raid placed in a windowless basement cooking for 60 wolves 3 times a day since the age of 6. Is that correct? She was given duties appropriate to my second question. Kalen's voice dropped. Not louder, colder. The temperature changed before a storm. The bruise on her wrist. The bruise that is shaped like a hand. Your hand, Alpha Gregor. Because I have been watching and I have been counting, and the mathematics of a child in a kitchen for 8 years tell me a story I find impossible to forgive. Gregor's face went white. My sons have not slept through the night since their mother died. 3 years. Every healer, every nurse, every elder in the Western Reach has tried. They scream. They bite. They cannot be held. And a 14-year-old girl, a girl you starved, a girl you bruised, a girl you called nothing, sat on a stone floor and hummed, and they fell asleep in her arms in 4 minutes. He looked at Gregor. Your kitchen girl did in 4 minutes what the entire Western Reach could not do in 3 years, and you bruised her for it. Tell me, would you have kept listening? Or would you have already started crying? I was crying. On the stairs, through the door, silently the way I had learned. The tears of someone who cannot afford to be heard. Kalan continued. I am dissolving the Ashford leadership. Effective immediately. Alpha Gregor is relieved of his position. Any wolf who participated in or witnessed the mistreatment of a child in your care and did nothing will answer to my counsel. Gregor lunged. Desperate. Stupid. The lunge of a man who has lost everything and whose last instinct is violence. 4 guards had him on the ground before his second step, face against stone, arms behind his back. Kalin looked down at him. You called her nothing. She is not nothing. She is the only person in this kingdom who made my sons feel safe, and you are the man who starved her. History will remember which one of you mattered. He found me on the stairs, sitting on the top step, crying. The quiet kind. The kitchen kind. He sat beside me. The Alpha King of the Western Reach, on a servant staircase that smelled like onion and old grease. I heard, I said. I know. You did not have to do that. Yes, I did. He was quiet for a moment. Then Wren. My sons chose you, not a nurse, not a healer, not a Luna. You, a girl in a kitchen who had every reason to stop caring and didn't. Who had been starved and still fed. Who had been given nothing and still gave. That is not nothing. That is the rarest thing I have ever seen. He took my hand. Not the bruised wrist, the hand. His fingers found mine and held them, and he was so careful, so gentle. The hands of a man who had seen the bruise and understood that hands had been weapons in my life and was determined that his would not be. I need to tell you something, he said, and I need you to hear it without running. I am sitting on a staircase. Where would I run? He almost smiled. The night you held them, the first night, I felt something. I thought it was gratitude. But it was not gratitude. It was the bond. The mate bond. It activated when you hummed that melody and Asher reached for you. Not because of the melody, because of what it meant. That you carried gentleness through 8 years of cold and it did not freeze. That you were starved and still fed. That you were given nothing and still gave. My wolf stirred. Not stirred, surged. Rose inside me like a tide, and I felt the bond lock into place the way a key turns, not with force but with recognition, silver light. It came from my skin. Soft, not dramatic. The glow of a wolf that had been hiding for 2 years and was finally allowed to breathe. Kalen's eyes widened. His hand tightened on mine. Not with force, but with the reverent grip of a man who has been alone for 3 years and has just found the end of it. You have a wolf, he said. I have always had a wolf. She was waiting. For what? For someone who would not make her a weapon, for someone who would just let her be warm. He pressed his forehead to mine, his breath on my face. 2 people on a servant's staircase in the least romantic place in the castle. And it was the most sacred moment of my life. As the proverb teaches, love does not come through the great hall with banners and ceremony. It comes through the basement. It arrives smelling like soup. And it finds you on the floor where you have been kneeling for 8 years and says, stand up, you were never meant to be down here. But this is a story about hunger. And hunger has more than one face. 3 days later, the morning before we were to leave for the Western Reach, I went to the kitchen early. My kitchen. One last time. To make bread. Because making bread was the only prayer I knew and I needed to pray. The door was open. The light was on. A woman was inside. Tall, red-haired, beautiful in a sharp, expensive way. Arms crossed. 2 of Gregor's former advisors flanked her, the kind of wolves who survive a regime change by attaching themselves to the next available power. She turned. Her eyes moved over me, flower, burns, servant dress, and her mouth curved into something shaped like a smile but tasting like poison. You are the kitchen girl. My name is Wren. She had been the pack's preferred candidate for Luna before Gregor's fall, wealthy, connected. She had spent 2 years positioning herself beside whoever held power. She had not calculated me. The king is making a mistake, she said. He is grief-stricken and lonely, and his sons latch on to the first warm body. That is not a bond. That is desperation. She stepped closer. You are a kitchen servant. No bloodline, no training, no education. You cannot run a territory or host a summit or stand beside the most powerful alpha in 5 territories. You will embarrass him. You will fail. And when you do, those boys will lose another mother. The words landed like stones. Because they were not entirely wrong. I could cook. I could hum a melody that calmed 2 children. But a Luna? A queen? I had learned to read from stolen books and ingredient labels. I had never been to a summit, never worn silk, never eaten at a table with chairs. She saw the fracture. The doubt. Walk away, she said, almost kindly. Take whatever the king offers and go somewhere quiet. It is what you were built for. I stood in my kitchen. 8 years of bread in the dark and soup from scraps. And I heard my mother's melody, not from outside, from inside, my wolf, humming. I looked at Valeria. "You are right," I said. "I do not know how to run a territory. I do not know how to host a summit. I do not know which fork to use at a formal dinner. And 6 months ago, those things would have made me walk away." I straightened. "But I know how to feed people who are hungry. I know how to stay when everyone else leaves. I know how to make a cold room warm with nothing but flour and water and time. I know how to hold 2 children who are terrified of the world and make them feel safe. And I learned all of that in this kitchen, on this floor, with nothing." I stepped toward her. "So, when you tell me what I am built for, when you tell me to live a small life, I need you to understand something. I built a life in a room with no windows. I raised myself in a basement. I kept my wolf alive for 2 years by hiding her inside me like a seed in frozen ground. I am not fragile. I am not temporary. And I am not going to disappear because a woman in silk told me I should. You may know how to stand beside a king, but I know how to stand alone. And I promise you, the woman who learned to stand alone is far more dangerous than the woman who never had to." Valeria's smile died. She left. The 2 advisors followed. The kitchen was quiet. I made bread. Keelan found me an hour later. Flour on my face, tears I had not quite finished wiping. He did not ask what happened. He looked at the bread. 3 perfect loaves, golden, warm, the kind of bread that fills a house with the smell of being cared for. And he looked at me. "You made bread," he said. "I make bread when I need to think. What were you thinking about? Whether I am enough." He sat on the kitchen stool, the alpha king in my kitchen, watching me with those amber eyes. "Wren, you made 2 feral children sleep by humming. You fed 60 wolves for 8 years on scraps and willpower. You kept a wolf hidden inside you like a secret for 2 years. You survived a man who called you nothing, and you came out of it with the ability to make the best bread I have ever eaten." He picked up a piece, ate it, slowly, with the expression of a man who is tasting something and realizing it is extraordinary. "You are not enough," he said. My heart dropped. "You are too much. You are so much that this pack could not see you because looking directly at you would have meant admitting what they had done. You are not invisible because you were small. You were invisible because seeing you would have been an indictment. And every wolf in that kitchen who walked past you for 8 years knew, somewhere they would not look, that the girl on the floor was worth more than all of them." He stood, crossed the room, took my floury hand. "I'm not asking you to be a Luna. I am asking you to be Wren, in a bigger kitchen, with windows." I laughed, wet, cracked, tangled with everything I had been holding. "I want the biggest windows in the Western Reach. Done. And the boys eat with me, at my table, in my kitchen, every morning, and I keep the soup recipe. The soup recipe stays yours." We left the next day. The twins rode with me, not in the king's carriage, in mine. A small, warm carriage with blankets and bread, and Ronan talking about beetles and Asher asleep on my chest with his fist on my sleeve. That fist, that grip, the smallest hand in the kingdom, and it held me tighter than any crown ever could. As the proverb teaches, the measure of a kingdom is not the strength of its alpha. It is what happens in the kitchen. It is who feeds the hungry when no one is watching. It is the woman on the cold floor at 3 in the morning, making bread in the dark, keeping something alive that the world tried to kill. That woman built a kingdom, not with power, with soup, beautiful souls. She was 6 years old on a cold floor with no one coming. She cooked for 60 wolves and ate what was left. She hid her wolf. She survived 8 years of stone and silence and hands that gripped too hard. And when 2 small boys found her in the basement, crying, hungry, motherless, she did not calculate the risk. She did not weigh the politics. She fed them. She held them. She hummed a melody her dead mother gave her, and the boys fell asleep, and the king fell with them. If no one has found you in the kitchen yet, they are coming. They will be small. They will be hungry. They will grip your sleeve and not let go. And the world that called you nothing will kneel on the floor you scrubbed and call you everything. Some love does not begin with a glance across a ballroom. Some love begins with bread, warm, simple, made in the dark by hands that refuse to stop giving. You were never nothing. Sweet dreams, beautiful souls. Where are you listening from? Tonight I am reading every single one. The kitchen finally has windows. Good night.